Welcome to Between the Headlines. I'm Gary Franchi. Before we begin tonight's broadcast, I want to congratulate Alan Wilson for his decisive victory in the GOP gubernatorial runoff in South Carolina. And yes, the next move is November, and we'll see you in the governor's mansion. Congratulations, Alan. That was a very well-fought race. Not easy, no doubt. Now let's get into our White House news for the day. We've got lots of news we're going to be getting at tonight. It is currently 8:48 in Washington, D.C., 74 degrees. Good evening. I'm Gary Franchi, Next News Network Chief White House Correspondent, delivering the latest White House news from the past 24 hours in partnership with our streaming partner, Trump Daily Post. Tonight, the White House is driving a clear message across the board. President Trump is pushing America to the front of quantum technology, locking in momentum towards permanent peace with Iran and tying tough border enforcement to results Americans can feel at home, including lower rents. The White House message over the last 24 hours centered on continued implementation of the President's Quantum Initiative executive order that was signed yesterday. The administration framed those actions as a major push to secure American leadership in quantum technologies, strengthen national security, and protect the country against advanced cryptographic threats. The White House also kept a heavy focus on the Iran track, declaring that Iran's military complex has been destroyed, that the Strait of Hormuz has reopened, and that lower oil prices and a stronger market are flowing from the president's deal-making. The same White House guidance tied border enforcement to economic relief, saying that the end of the open borders era was helping drive rents down nationwide. On the social platforms, the administration promoted quantum leadership, Iran progress, and a health initiative from Senator Kennedy built around the message that the future of medicine should be built in America. The White House also highlighted that President Trump used Truth Social to reinforce support for the Iran agreement, political endorsements, and America First wins. In addition, the White House included a South Carolina political note pointing to Attorney General Alan Wilson's decisive Republican primary runoff win for governor on Tuesday night. And from the pool reports in Pennsylvania, President Trump sharpened the administration's Iran message during a 7-minute press gaggle under the wing of the aircraft after landing. He said Iran was wrong to claim there is no scheduled visit from International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors and made clear that inspectors will be on the ground at the appropriate time. The White House statement on the broader Iran effort said Vice President Vance and the U.S. negotiating team secured a foundational deal in Switzerland with mechanisms for an open Strait of Hormuz, a regional ceasefire channel, and renewed IAEA access inside Iran. The White House added that technical teams from multiple agencies, including the Department of Energy, are now working the next phase, while President Trump remains firm that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. From the in-town pool reports, President Trump departed the White House at 11:52 this morning for Pennsylvania. Didn't take questions on the way out. We also have the note that the travel pool tracked the trip in stages. The motorcade rolled to Joint Base Andrews in rainy conditions. The pool noted the dismantling of the UFC claw on the south lawn along the route. The White House officials said several guests traveled with the president, including Senator Dave McCormick, Congressman John Joyce, and Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who is back from her maternity leave, along with senior aides. One pool email contained an obvious error and referred to President Biden boarding the aircraft, but the surrounding travel reports make clear that President Trump was on today's Pennsylvania trip. The aircraft landed at Reading Regional Airport at 12:58 p.m. with no visitors to the back of the plane during the short flight. The motorcade reached Mack Trucks Lehigh Valley Operations at 2:05 p.m. The venue placed the president on a factory floor stage beneath the large America Workers First banner framed by two red and white trucks with workers in fluorescent safety vests behind him. President Trump took the stage at 2:48 to cheers and chants of USA, toured the factory beforehand, and delivered remarks that continued through the afternoon. A heckler was quickly removed early in the speech, while the crowd answered with applause, cheers, and plenty of MAGA gear in view. The speech wrapped at 4:13 p.m. with YMCA playing as the pool exited, and the president even paused to compliment a supporter wearing a brick wall patterned suit before the motorcade pulled out for the airport at 4:20. From there, the pool returned to Reading Airport at 4:57 p.m. and President Trump left Pennsylvania at 5 p.m. after making brief remarks that the pool could not clearly hear. Air Force One touched down at Joint Base Andrews at 5:40. The president re-entered the motorcade just after 5:50, and the motorcade arrived back at the White House shortly after 6:15. The in-town pool confirmed the president returned at 6:17 and did not take questions. At 6:26, the White House called the travel and photo lid for the rest of the day. Now, earlier in the day, according to the daily guidance relayed through the in-town pool, there were initially no changes to the White House schedule and no in-town events were expected before the president's Pennsylvania trip was added to the day's movement reports. Separately, the vice president's overnight Switzerland travel officially closed out just after midnight on Eastern Time when Air Force Two landed at Joint Base Andrews at 12:39 a.m. The Vice President and Second Lady stayed on board and continued on to San Diego, and the travel report noted that Atlas, the second family's German Shepherd, was seen being brought onto the plane. Taken together, the last 24 hours show an administration pressing its advantage, driving implementation on quantum technology, reinforcing a hardline peace-through-string approach on Iran, and keeping the president active on the road with an America Workers First message. That's the White House file tonight. Now let's move ahead to the rest of the day's top stories across the country. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Between the Headlines. I'm Gary Franchi, your chief White House correspondent for the Next News Network. And of course, we are streaming on X at Next News and in coordination with Trump Daily Posts, where you should be following them as well. Also, our flagship YouTube channel and on Rumble and on Kick. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with the news of the day. We're going to start off. We got a couple stories. We got about 6 stories tonight. We need to talk about what's going on with Dr. Fauci. I've been tracking that story with Senator Rand Paul following Tulsi Gabbard's bombshell last week. And now I specifically reached out to Rand Paul to find out if there was going to be a new effort to drag him before Congress, and right on cue, we're finding out that Fauci will be dragged before Congress. So I've got all the details on that. We'll have more details on the Iran situation, some remarks from Pelosi. We've also got, we're tracking this ridiculous activity at the reflecting pool. The mainstream media continues to melt down. Lots of remarks and video from that. We've also got new news on Ilhan Omar that you're going to really want to hear. She's making some headlines, not in the best way. Yeah. Also, we've got more news on Cuba, big moves on Cuba. As you know, I've been talking about how Cuba is going to be the next domino to fall following Iran. And as Iran is getting buttoned up, we're starting to see the movement towards and the refocus now back onto Cuba. And of course, the latest with respect to Tulsi Gabbard's exit as the ODNI chief, now moving on to Bill Pulte, and the actions he took today, draining the swamp and making the swamp very nervous. Lots of people fired today. So we're going to get to all that news. But first, let's jump into the latest with Dr. Fauci. Anthony Fauci played games with the Senate for 6 months. Agreed to testify, then bolted. And now Rand Paul has him cornered with a subpoena and a date he can't spin away. July 29th, 10 a.m., Dirksen. That detail matters. Not next year, not behind closed doors, not another lawyer letter. Dirksen, public, on the record. The same man who barked orders at the entire country from a microphone now wants to dodge questions from one senator who never folded. Fauci thought a vague Biden-era autopen pardon and a wall of media flattery would keep him untouchable. Well, Rand Paul just blew that fantasy up. And this matters because Anthony Fauci did not operate like some cautious lab researcher caught in a paperwork spat. Anthony Fauci operated like an unelected ruler. He pushed the claims that fueled lockdown, censorship, mandates, school closures, wrecked businesses, and years of attacks on basic American liberty. Now Rand Paul says U.S. taxpayer money funneled through USAID and NIH funded gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Research, Paul says, likely caused the pandemic that killed millions and cost trillions. And then came the cover-up. Rand Paul asked three brutal questions. Did Fauci fund gain of research while telling Congress he did not? Why were records destroyed? And why did he need a presidential pardon? Add Paul's charge that Biden's pardon was unconstitutionally vague, covered 10 years of potential crimes, and got signed by autopen without Biden's direct authorization, and you see the machine clearly. Democrat fixers, media propagandists, and Washington elites protected the man whose commands crushed normal American life. July 29th in Dirksen is about whether Americans still have the strength to reject bureaucratic decay. And that same fight pushed me to C60 Evo. See, I've tried hundreds of supplements. Nothing hit like C60 Evo. This Nobel Prize-winning molecule is not just another antioxidant. It works at the cellular level where aging actually happens. My brain fog gone, joint pain virtually eliminated. My wife's skin looks 10 years younger, and my energy feels 20 years younger. The Paris study called it the longest life extension in history. Lab animals live 90% longer. It's 172 times more powerful than vitamin C, and it's worth more than gold per ounce. And it's made in a Houston lab that's been doing it since 1991. Get exclusive savings, more energy, clearer thinking, better skin, and feel young again at c60evo.com/NNN. Use code NNN at checkout. Reject the frauds and pick results. And now, the detail that Fauci can't hide from. Rand Paul did not say Fauci never agreed. He said Fauci finally agreed to appear this month, then backed out. That's not caution, that's panic. A man who spent years commanding your church, your business, your child's classroom, and your family gathering suddenly turns timid when the witness chair comes with a microphone he does not control. We're going to pull up all of the reaction because the audience is about to see what this looks like, and the fury is justified. So let's take a look here. We got this from Senator Rand Paul. He said, last week Anthony Fauci notified us he will not voluntarily testify before the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, even though he previously agreed to do so. Therefore, today we have issued a subpoena for him to publicly testify. And here is the picture of Rand Paul signing that subpoena. So he makes it official. Fauci doesn't get to duck the hearing. Now, Catherine Herridge zeroes in on the date and location with the subpoena pointing to July 29th, 10 a.m. in Dirksen. Now, you could take a look. She zoomed in and she was able to break it down. And you can see right there, there is the date, July 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. at Dirksen Senate office. And that is D-Day for Fauci. So the clock is set. He's got a date with the committee. Next, Young Americans for Liberty sums up what Rand Paul keeps being the one that Fauci just can't shake. Senator Rand Paul is the thorn in Dr. Fauci's side that will not go away, and neither will I. So Paul's allies are cheering because he refused to let Fauci slither away. House Republicans want more than applause. Nancy Mace is calling for an investigation, saying Fauci belongs behind bars. It's something we've been saying for a long time. Dr. Fauci should be behind bars, but at the very least, he needs to be investigated. He lied to Congress. According to new reports, he funded the Wuhan lab with your tax dollars. He tortured puppies. He mishandled the entire COVID-19 pandemic and watched Americans lose everything while he faced zero accountability. This man is not a doctor. He's a fraudster who scammed the American people for years and walked away without a single consequence. It's time he face some accountability. Investigate Fauci is the image that she shared from her office. So she's raising the heat on accountability, accusing Fauci of lying and walking free. Now, Rand Paul lays out how 6 months of talks with Fauci's lawyers ended up with one thing, a subpoena. For 6 months, I've been negotiating with Fauci's lawyers over a date to testify. He finally agreed to appear this month. Then he backed out, so I subpoenaed him. He will testify in July. So after months of negotiation, Paul says Fauci agreed and backed out. Next, he sharpens the case, asking the question, did Dr. Fauci fund gain-of-function research while telling Congress he didn't? Why were records destroyed? Why did he need a presidential pardon? The American people deserve answers, and I'm going to make sure they get them during our hearing next month. Amen, Rand Paul. God bless you. So those aren't small questions. They go straight to what Fauci knew and what he hid. And now Paul taking aim at Biden's pardon itself, calling it vague, overbroad, and signed by autopen. And this is the question that we've all wanted to know. Biden's pardon of Fauci is unconstitutionally vague. covers 10 years of potential crimes, was signed by autopen without Biden's direct authorization. That is a direct message from Senator Paul, who is about to drag Fauci before the Senate yet again. And we're going to see Fauci squirm. You see, those pardons are all for everything that Fauci has done previous, not what he is about to do. So if he lies under oath again, then it's over for Dr. Fauci. So if the pardon is shaky, Fauci's legal cover may be weaker than the media wants you to think. Even CNBC's Joe Kernan presses the issue as Rand Paul calls Fauci the face of Big Brother medicine. The mask is finally off.
He's got pardon going forward, pardon going backwards. I don't know whether those stand up, but 2 years ago, David Sachs, I'm sure you know him, he said this explains exactly how he orchestrated the pandemic, or at least knew about gain-of-function research, and then changed the story. And I tweeted at the time, can someone explain to me why Dems line up to defend this guy? Can you explain why Democrats have lined up to defend Fauci when it was clear as the nose on your face what had happened?
I think he represents Big Brother in public health. The Big Brother that tells you what to do, doesn't give you advice, but commands you and tells you what to do. And the left really is fine with an authoritarian approach to medicine. But to give
So the CNN exchange blows up the Democrats' favorite defense of Fauci. Now James Comer takes it further on Fox Business, saying Fauci ignored warnings, funded dangerous research, and left criminal referrals sitting at the DOJ.
Saying Fauci misused taxpayer money for gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab and then lied about it. Joining me now is Kentucky Congressman James Comer. He's the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for being here. You led a multi-year investigation into Fauci and the origins of COVID. You've also questioned Fauci in a congressional hearing. What is your reaction to this? Would you bring him back in now for more testimony?
Well, this is more evidence of what we already knew. Dr. Fauci lied. He caused a great deal of pain for every American and most people around the world. The decisions that were made by the leadership at the time in America were based solely on what Dr. Fauci was saying, and now we know what we've always suspected, that he completely lied. He lied about funding gain-of-function research. He lied about the origins of COVID. He just continued to lie throughout the entire COVID debacle. You know, the decisions were made about the vaccines. If we had known at the time that this didn't come from a wet market, this was man-made, would that have had an impact on the type of vaccine that Americans were given, that we now know probably has caused a lot of health problems as a result of the COVID vaccine? So we already did the investigation, and we already have criminal referrals sitting on the desk at the Department of Justice. The Senate did the same. The Senate Homeland Security also has criminal referrals dating back a year and a half on Dr. Fauci. We also, my committee, the Oversight Committee, did an investigation of the pardon that Joe Biden gave, all the pardons. And we concluded that Joe Biden wasn't at the table. There were no meetings with Joe Biden. The Constitution's clear. The president has sole authority to grant pardons, but there's no evidence that at the time that President Biden was even involved in the pardon process. They were signed by the autopen, but there's no evidence. And that was based on all the depositions we had with all the key people in the White House during the Biden administration. There's no evidence Joe Biden participated in the decision-making of the pardon process. So there's more than enough evidence. And what Tulsi did is outstanding. It provides even more evidence for the Department of Justice to begin taking steps to hold Dr. Fauci accountable.
Yes. Let's go. So the evidence is already there. DOJ is dragging its feet. Next, Dr. Peter McCullough connects Wuhan research to vaccine development and says officials covered their tracks from the start.
Pushing the unproven theory that the COVID pandemic came out of a wet market in China. But then that was EcoHealth Alliance chief Dr. Peter Daszak, a friend of Dr. Fauci, admitting that the Wuhan lab in China was genetically creating, quote, killer super coronaviruses. This is gain-of-function research so as to sell vaccines. EcoHealth Alliance did get U.S. taxpayer money to do this dangerous research. And now former DNI Tulsi Gabbard declassified documents showing the CIA warned Dr. Fauci about a Wuhan Wuhan lab accident where lab workers did get infected in late 2019. Let's bring in Dr. Peter McCullough. Doctor, what's your take on them talking about this? The documents show a government official under Joe Biden said they saw this video of Daszak talking about inserting spike proteins into viruses to make them superviruses more infectious to bind to human cells. What's your take?
Fauci, when he was talking about the wet lab, he was lying through his teeth. He knew all the while that SARS-CoV-2 was created in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And his influence was enormous through the intelligence community, the academic community.
So McCullough argues it wasn't confusion, deliberate cover-up. Now Rand Paul brings it back to the money trail, saying taxpayer dollars through USAID and NIH funded the Wuhan work. Fauci later denied. Rand Paul on a tear today on X. U.S. taxpayer money funneled through USAID and NIH funded gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That research likely caused the COVID pandemic that killed millions and cost trillions. Dr. Fauci personally signed off on these experiments, then lied to Congress about it. So Paul is putting Fauci's own approval and the Wuhan funding front and center. Next, Vigilant Fox revisits a warning from 2014 when hundreds of scientists said this kind of gain-of-function research could trigger a global pandemic. Here is RFK Jr.
We're going to take a wild virus and we're going to make it more pathogenic, more virulent, more deadly, and then we're going to develop a vaccine for that. And that's classic gain-of-function research. Why are they doing that? What is the rationale for them doing that? The only real rationale, if you think about it, is to develop bioweapons and then develop a defense to those bioweapons. So that's what they were doing. And Anthony Fauci was given a 68% raise by the military because of these new military responsibilities. He continued to do that to 2014. And that year, 3 of the bugs escaped. In high-profile escapes from 3 different labs in the United States, really deadly bugs escaped or were found in unsafe circumstances. And 300 scientists sent a letter to President Obama asking him to shut down Anthony Fauci's research on gain-of-function, saying that it was highly likely that he would start a global pandemic with this kind of very dangerous research. And President Obama issued a moratorium and shut down 18 of the worst projects by Anthony Fauci, or ordered them shut. In the end, he really didn't shut them. He instead moved the research offshore, where he would be out of the oversight of these troublesome scientists, the 300 scientists, a group that called itself the Cambridge Working Group, and of White House officials. And the major lab offshore that they moved this research, there were other ones too. They moved research to Ukraine, to the former Soviet state of Georgia. But some of the worst research they moved to a Chinese lab that was run by the Chinese military, the Wuhan lab in Wuhan, the Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China.
So the early warnings make Fauci's now look even worse in hindsight. Now Rand Paul closes the loop, saying the media treated Fauci as untouchable for years, but the subpoena is here and the answers are overdue. For years, the media and Washington elites treated Fauci as untouchable, but if you lie to Congress, destroy records, and mislead the public about the origins of a pandemic that killed millions, you shouldn't be above scrutiny. I've issued a subpoena for Dr. Fauci. It's time for answers. And here is Rand Paul on CNBC today.
Switch to Fauci because I can remember seeing emails that were out. It had to be 3 or 4 years ago, where he was trying to convince other scientists to go with the story. We can get by with the natural origin story. It certainly looks unlikely. And they switched their position on what was staring them right in the face. It was like a walking, quacking duck, more or less, that it came from this lab. He convinced them because he knew he had funded gain-of-function research. And he told you was that under oath, under testimony, that had never happened?
Absolutely, and that's a felony to lie to Congress, and we've gotten more evidence over the last year. From the Biden administration, they revealed nothing. From the Trump administration, particularly with Secretary Kennedy, we've gotten a lot of information. That information has revealed that not only did he lie to Congress, he knew that he was lying to Congress. He knew he was making several continuous and contiguous lies to begin with, but he also, from the very beginning, was destroying records, sending letters and notes to Francis Collins, the head of NIH, saying, read this and destroy this. That sounds more like the CIA talking to each other, but not the executive branch. That's against the law and also a felony. So we've been negotiating with him for material and for a testimony. This has gone on for some time. He slow walked us, finally agreed to come in voluntarily. That would have been this month, and then this week, or last week perhaps, rather, he says he's not coming in. And so we've issued a subpoena. I was able to get subpoena power for our committee last year, and so with this subpoena power, we will bring him in unless he decides to fight it in court. So we'll see what happens, but I think he does need to come in and testify. Look, 15 million people died worldwide, and it was from dangerous research that he funded. What a judgment error. Probably no judgment error equal to this in modern medical history.
And it became clear.
So the moral center of the story sits in one humiliating fact. Anthony Fauci commanded America in public, but when Rand Paul locked in a public hearing, Anthony Fauci ran. He ran after 6 months of lawyer games. He ran after agreeing to testify. He ran even with a Biden-era pardon floating over him like a political shield. Then Rand Paul snapped the trap shut with a subpoena. That's why July 29th at 10 a.m. at the Dirksen building matters so much. It strips away the costume. The sainted TV doctor turns back into what he always was, a regime bureaucrat who loved power, hid the paper trail, and expected the Democrat machine to smother consequences forever. Rand Paul just ripped that protection away in broad daylight. So here is the line in the sand. If Anthony Fauci walks into Dirksen on July 29th and gets treated like some fragile elder statesman, then Washington learned nothing from the wreckage it helped cause. But if Rand Paul presses the questions he already put on the table, gain of function, destroyed records, taxpayer cash to Wuhan, and that grotesque 10-year autopen pardon, then the country finally starts clawing back a little justice from the administrative state. President Trump's return already broke the regime's spell in this town. Now conservatives in Congress have a chance to finish a piece of unfinished business the Biden years buried under protection, propaganda, and arrogance. So share this with people who still think Fauci was just following the science, and put July 29th, 10 a.m. right on your calendar. Put it in front of them. Make them look at it. Fauci agreed. Fauci backed out. Rand Paul subpoenaed him. Now let's see if the man who ordered America around can handle one morning under oath. And I want to make sure you get the news that you rely on. I understand your pain. You don't get the notifications that you've asked for from YouTube, so I set up this number just for you, 844-840-4963. Text raw feed, and I'll make sure you get the notifications direct from me. And let's celebrate America 250, shall we? Go to the Next News merch shelf below this video or go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. Well, I can certainly tell you I am excited. I am excited for July 29th. Mark your calendars, folks. That is going to be a date to remember when Fauci is dragged before the Senate yet again. And speaking of accountability, we're going to move on into the latest from Iran and President Trump on the trail today in Pennsylvania. We have all the details. At Mack Trucks in Lehigh Valley, with American workers first blazing above the crowd, Donald Trump dropped the line that sent the whole regime press into a panic. Iran agreed to the highest level nuclear inspections long into the future, infinity. Think about that. Not 6 months, not a wink and a nod side letter, infinity. And while Nancy Pelosi and the fake news scrambled to shrink it, Trump kept the Strait of Hormuz open, kept the ships in place, and routed any released money into U.S.-controlled escrow for food and medicine bought from American farmers. Corn, wheat, soybeans. That's not diplomacy school mush. That's dominance. And the people screaming loudest right now just gave away exactly why this win matters. And it matters because Donald Trump just flipped the old Middle East scam on its head. For 47 years, weak presidents let Iran build leverage through terror, oil choke points, and nuclear blackmail. Barack Obama shipped weakness. Joe Biden inherited that rot and fed chaos across the region when he was president. Trump broke it. He said Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. He said their Navy's wrecked, their Air Force is wrecked, their radar is wrecked, their missile capacity is wrecked, and their nuclear capacity is done. Then he tied any released money to U.S.-controlled escrow for food and medicine purchased exclusively from the United States, including corn, wheat, and soybeans from our farmers. And that hits your wallet, your safety at the same time. Open Hormuz means energy lanes move. 19 million barrels flowed through the strait in a single day. American agriculture wins instead of Iranian terror networks. And Nancy Pelosi still called Obama's old surrender package masterful. That tells you everything. Pelosi and her Bloomberg-style doubt merchants and Tehran's propagandists would rather protect their narrative than celebrate an American victory, staring them right in the face. And when Trump can turn a Hormuz showdown into leverage for American farmers, you should think the same way about your own future. That's why Noble Gold Investments grabs my attention right now. Silver, as the next oil, is not hype. It's a critical resource tied to solar panels, electric vehicles, defense systems, AI infrastructure, and massive data centers. Growing demand keeps building, and it is still affordable. So the average American can start accumulating physical silver now and protect against inflation while owning strategic resources. Noble Gold understands this is the metal that the future depends on. Go to nextnewsgold.com, and when you mention me and open a new qualified account, you can get a 1/10 ounce gold coin. Noble Gold sees what the regime never does. Strength belongs to people who move early. And here's the detail the regime chorus can't wash away with spin. Trump did not just brag about pressure. He spelled out the enforcement trigger in public. If Iran did not agree to inspections, there would be no further negotiations. And if Tehran games the deal now, America can snap the blockade right back into place because the ships never left. And that's the part I want you watching as I pull up the receipts, because the crowd at Mack Truck, they understood something the pundits still do not. Trump opened the strait without surrendering leverage. Caroline Levitt, she's back from her maternity leave. She's following the president around, doing her press secretary thing. And she had this post today: back on the road with President Trump. A lively crowd and a packed house at Mack Trucks in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. There's a shot there. American workers first. So the packed Mack Trucks crowd shows exactly where Trump's strength comes from, American workers. And from that same stage, he turns to Iran with a blunt warning: be smart, or the job gets finished fast.
Venezuela's been great and Iran's been great. I mean, you know, if Iran's reasonable, if they're smart, otherwise we'll have to finish the job, which will take about maybe less than a week. But they're going to be okay, I think. They're going to do what they have to do because we want to have it done.
So you heard the warning, Trump laying out what he says comes next: peace, a peace agreement, a crushed Iranian military position, and a guarantee Tehran never gets a nuclear weapon.
As you know, we just achieved a historic peace agreement with Iran to end the conflict in the Strait of Hormuz. And by the way, yesterday, 19 million barrels of oil flowed out of the Strait of Hormuz, a very beautiful place. That's the most oil in the history of the Strait. No, it's never been any, you've never seen anything like that. It's called an oil gusher. And most importantly, we are ensuring one thing very importantly, because this is why I did it. I did it for this reason, 99% for this. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, and they've agreed to that. But remember, this wasn't easy. We had 47 years worth of presidents and other people, other countries too. We're not the only one that never did anything. They were the bully of the Middle East. And now we're leaving Iran with no Navy, no Air Force, no anti-aircraft, no missile capability, no nuclear program. We're leaving them without any nuclear capacity, and they've agreed to that. And we're getting along quite well, although if you read the fake news, you never know. Think of it. The fake news. They have no army. They have no navy. They have no air force. They have no anti-aircraft. We can fly over Tehran just at will. Nobody going to do anything to us. And then I read the fake news that they're doing quite well. They're not doing quite well. These people right there, look at all of them. Whoa. 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 That's a lot of press. That's almost as much press as Bo had at the White House last week when he knocked out his opponent in the first round. Right? I think you had more. Bo had more press. But the Iran economy has been crushed and their defense industrial base has been damaged so severely that it'll take them many years to rebuild, many, many years. And now we're trying to work out a deal that's fair.
So while the press tries to downplay it, voters are moving in the other direction. President Trump gets in the poll numbers as Trump's approval climbs on Iran and our economy. Rapid response reveals that Trump's approval rating has surged as voters deliver their verdict on Iran and the economy. So the numbers matter because Trump says the leverage is real. Next, he explains how Iran is cornered and why U.S.-controlled money would go to American farmers supplying food aid.
We have Iran in a position that nobody's ever had. This should have been done for 47 years by other presidents. And we have Iran in a position where their military has been totally wiped out, their leadership has been wiped out, their radar has been wiped out, everything's been wiped out. They have not a good negotiating position. But despite that, and money that will be taken out of Iran is going to go to our farmers to give corn, soybeans, wheat to Iran because they have a hunger problem, they have a food problem, they have a medicine problem, they got a lot of problems. And they have an inflation. Their inflation now just hit 300%. So they have a lot of problems.
So Trump says Iran is in no position to dictate terms that American farmers would benefit. Now Pelosi jumps in with the old Obama playbook, attacking the deal and repeating the usual Democrat talking points.
And for this president to have torn it up and now coming back with even what the Republicans said is a failure. It's a failure if we're giving $300 billion to reconstruction, to lift the sanctions on their sale of oil, to so many things that, again, unfreezing money in banks that they have wanted to have unfrozen. Just a ridiculous giveaway and not addressing the one complaint that people had about the Obama nuclear agreement with Iran was that it didn't address the ballistic missiles, and neither does this. So we tore up a good agreement. We went to war. We lost American lives, sadly. But we have something that is costing taxpayers enormous amounts of money to give to Iran and paying individually at the pump. At the pump. And this is really something that has hit home hard for people.
So that was the Democrat spin machine in full force. Now we get Trump's direct answer to the media noise, insisting Iran agreed to 100% inspections and saying, without that, there is no deal.
The Iranians are saying there's no scheduled visit for the IAEA inspectors. Is that part of your agreement?
They're wrong. They're wrong. They're wrong. They know they're wrong. They told us inside, and we have it down, 100% inspections. And if they were right, I'd cancel the meetings right now.
And Iran says there's no
When will those, from your view, Mr. President, when will those inspectors actually be on the ground?
At the appropriate time. At the appropriate time. There's no rush, but they'll be on the ground at the appropriate time.
So Trump just flat out rejected the press narrative on inspections. Next comes his Truth Social post where he raises the stakes and says Iran accepted the highest level of nuclear inspections long into the future infinity. This from Trump Daily Post. President Trump posted that Iran has surrendered to the toughest long-term nuclear inspections in history, allowing the Strait of Hormuz to stay open while America controls all aid money for food and medicine from U.S. farmers. Despite their protestations and false statements to the contrary, coupled with a drumbeat of fake news, which is doing everything possible to make the U.S. victory as small and insignificant as possible, Iran has fully and completely agreed to the highest level nuclear inspections long into the future infinity. This will ensure nuclear honesty. If they do not agree to this, there will be no further negotiations. Based on this and other major concessions being made by Iran, I have agreed to allow the Strait of Hormuz to remain open, no further naval blockade. However, all ships are remaining in place. Should it be necessary to reinstitute the blockade, which seems at this point highly unlikely, The money and or sanctions that the U.S. Treasury is releasing goes into escrow controlled by the USA and will be used for the purchase of food and medical supplies exclusively from the United States, including corn, wheat, and soybeans from our great American farmers. These are things that are desperately needed by Iran. This is a humanitarian crisis, and I feel it is necessary to help now before it's too late. Talks are going well. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump. There is the Truth Social post. And that's the post going over the heads of the corporate media and putting the terms right on the table. Now Fox shows the backlash from Tehran, the inspection fight, and Trump's warning that negotiations end without oversight.
Vice President J.D. Vance announced that Iran has agreed to allow international atomic energy inspectors into their country. President Trump posted on Truth Social this morning saying, in part, if they did not agree to this, there would be no further negotiations. Well, the Iranians today are going on the record saying they did not agree to this point. Take a listen.
We neither had a meeting with the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, nor do we have any plan for the agency to inspect Iran's nuclear facilities damaged as a result of the U.S. military aggression and the Zionist regime. Fundamentally, there is no procedure in this regard.
Now, President Trump spoke from the Oval Office on Monday, saying that if Iran doesn't live up to their end of the agreement, he'll do what he has to do. The focus over the next 60 days will be resolving issues surrounding Iran's nuclear program and keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. With the initial agreement in place, millions of barrels of crude oil are leaving the Persian Gulf each day.
We took in more oil yesterday than has ever gone through the Strait. You probably see that. We have an oil gusher. The Strait is totally open. You know that. And we're negotiating. We'll see how that all goes. But we have two things. We have an open Strait, and we have a country that will never have a nuclear weapon. Will never, ever have a nuclear weapon.
On Monday, the U.S. Treasury authorized Iranian oil sales, temporarily waiving long-placed sanctions against the Iranian regime. The sanctions relief will be controlled by the United States, and unfrozen money Iran receives in the future would be used to purchase food and medical supplies for the Iranian people, according to President Trump. Now, there is this other broad issue of Lebanon and the exchange of fire between Israel and Hezbollah. The Israelis today targeted a cell of Hezbollah gunmen in the southern part of Lebanon. They say they had intelligence that these militants were planning an attack against their forces.
So the moral test here is brutally simple. Donald Trump stood in an industrial plant under the words "American workers first" and said any humanitarian money goes through U.S.-controlled escrow to buy American corn, American wheat, American soybeans, while Iran accepts inspections long into the future. Infinity! Nancy Pelosi heard that and still rushed to praise Barack Obama's old Iran deal as masterful. Masterful? Obama handed the mullahs breathing room. Trump stripped them down, kept the blockade threat alive, and forced Tehran to choose between compliance and pain. Then Michael Bloomberg's style of press room sneering kicked in on cue, and Tehran's own mouthpieces piled on because they all need the same lie to survive, that Trump did not win. Well, he did. He cornered a regime that spent decades bullying presidents who folded. So here is the line that's going forward. Enforce every inch, verify every site. If Tehran stalls, lies, or blocks inspectors, President Trump should hammer the switch and restore maximum pressure immediately. No slippage, no cocktail party excuses from the permanent foreign policy class. No Nancy Pelosi sermons about how surrender was somehow sophistication. The scoreboard already tells the story. The Strait of Hormuz is open, oil is flowing, Iran's leverage is shattered, American farmers stand first in line for any lawful humanitarian sales, and the whole thing unfolded not in some velvet rope summit lounge, but at Mack Trucks in Lehigh Valley under that perfect banner, American Workers First. That image says more than 1,000 think tank papers ever will. So drop your take in the comments if you want total inspections and zero games from Tehran. And share this clip with anyone still parroting the regime's spin. We're going to keep the scoreboard up where everyone can see it. And I want to make sure you see it. And that's why I set up this telephone number just for you, 844-840-4963. Thousands and thousands of patriots have already texted the words raw feed to that number. And they're getting the inside scoop when the YouTube notifications never arrive because I'm sending them direct to you now. And let's celebrate these wins. by going to the merch shelf below this video. Pick up some America 250 merch. It is upon us now, or just go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. Moving right along, that is the Iran story. So we got our White House briefing earlier, and checking with our other things. Okay, so the autopen horror. I cannot wait to see what happens on July 29th. That was your Iran report. Now we're going from the Iran report to this ridiculous reflecting pool story that just continues to permeate. President Trump doing all he can to restore beauty in our nation's capital, restore American pride, and the left, whether it's activists or the media, continue to try to tear it down, and literally tearing it down. Six arrested, 7 cited. 17 police reports and the corporate press still planted Ed O'Keefe at the Lincoln reflecting pool to announce with a straight face that he still can't find the 350-foot gash President Trump described. That's the story. Not ducks, not algae, not CBS doing laps around the water like some cable news lifeguard drill. President Trump says the damage was purposefully and criminally done. Now ABC, CBS, and CNN are running interference for the vandals, while Trump threatens to sue ABC and send their money straight to the U.S. Treasury. Good. Make the liars pay. Because what these people are protecting, it tells you everything. And the fight matters because the Lincoln Memorial is not a prop for Democrat activists or a punchline for regime reporters. It's a national symbol. President Trump's restoring it ahead of America 250, while the same media machine that covered for disorder under the former Biden administration now sneers at enforcement, mocks repairs, and gaslights the country in real time. Caroline Leavitt laid it out. 17 police reports in just a few days, 6 arrests and suspects tied to the Democrat Party, Barack Obama, and Act Blue. That's not random mischief. That's a political culture that treats desecration, as activism, and accountability as the scandal. Then you get Scott McFarlane joking that if prosecutors took this to a D.C. grand jury, you might hear laughter outside the room. Laughter at vandalism of the Lincoln reflecting pool. CNN sent crews to sniff algae. CBS hunted for a slit. ABC pushed false reporting. President Trump fixed the city, cleared the tents, beautified the monuments, and made Washington safer. The press answered by becoming defense lawyers for chaos. When Ed O'Keefe and CNN are out there playing pool detective, I pay more attention to things that actually help real people. You see, I saw that Joe Rogan and Mel Gibson clip on red light therapy, and when Gibson said the stuff works, it hit home. Jonathan Otto first turned me onto it after I watched my own family push through serious health struggles, constant discomfort, and anxiety. Then finally, it all got real. Restful sleep, better energy, improved recovery. Light-based therapies deliver cellular-level support with red and near-infrared wavelengths for deeper penetration. NASA-backed research shaped this field. FDA-cleared devices can support circulation and reduce inflammation. At myredlight.com, you'll find PEMF mats, full-body coverage, infrared heat, and at-home use instead of paid sessions. Go to myredlight.com, use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. Build health and ignore the media circus. And here's the detail the corporate press wants buried under all that algae theater. Trump's contractor is coming back under warranty. No new funds. Read that again. No new funds. So while CNN chirps that its team spotted more signs of algae and CBS keeps pretending the only story is that their cameras can't find on one morning walk, the actual work keeps moving. The monument keeps getting repaired and the vandals keep getting tracked. Now I'm going to show you the receipts because the audience in America, we see the scam more clearly than the people paid to hide it. President Trump has threatened to sue ABC News over its coverage of the chaos engulfing the reflecting pool.
We have a I think 290, 300-foot slit right through it, probably a box cutter or a knife of some kind. Or we had people lifting up the basic, some of the, it's not a lot of damage, but we'll probably have to let the water out and refix it. They went in there with a knife. I was just told by the people over at Parks, they have 5 people are arrested and 5 people are under investigation right now.
National Guard and police have been all over the mall. How would these vandals have gotten so close to do something like that? Do you have any proof of this?
I mean, we didn't have a lot of them then. Who would think that somebody would go into a pool and take a knife and start cutting it?
But do you have proof of that?
Yeah,
we
have
have
proof.
photos or videos?
Well, let's put it this way. When you have a 350, I think it's 350, not 250, a 350-foot slit from one end to the other, you think that's proof? You think that's proof?
Reporters have been down there today looking for that slit that you mentioned, and there's no evidence of
all
it.
you'd have to do is see the Parks Department. They'll show it to you. Somebody said fertilizer in the water. If you put fertilizer in the water, you get algae. But somebody said they might have put fertilizer. They did something to create the algae, but that doesn't matter because that's been purified. It's dead. Laying at the bottom, they're taking it out. They vacuum it out. They vacuum it very carefully out. And it'll be back to health pretty soon.
So Trump says ABC pushed falsehoods about the reflecting pool mess. Now, here's the president himself laying out the alleged knife damage and saying arrests are already underway.
They've arrested, I think, 6 people on the reflecting pool. So the reflecting pool looks fantastic. I just got pictures of it. It's beautiful. But somebody went in with a knife and cut it. They cut it up good. And then they cut a 350-foot slip in the form of lots of little slips, real horrible stuff, and they destroyed the grass. We put a brand new big load of grass out there, and they destroyed it. So it's all being fixed, but it's a shame. So I understand 5 or 6 people are arrested. The Interior Department can refer to you on that. And I hear they have 6 people under investigation.
So Trump is doubling down. It wasn't wear and tear, it was sabotage. Next, CBS Scott McFarlane tries to downplay the arrest and mocks the entire case on air.
A botched redecorating of a monument that means, as Amanda said, means something to everyone. It doesn't belong to Donald Trump. It doesn't belong to any president that's in office. He's the steward of it for 4 years and he ruined it. Tell me how the arrests around the reflecting pool are changing D.C. right now.
Let me tell you about the 5 arrests first, Nicole. They're not major cases. They are U.S. Park Police or federal law enforcement citations. If the Department of Justice wants to make this a major case and charge these people with felonies, they have to go to a grand jury. And though grand jury deliberations are secretive in a closed room, you might hear the laughter outside the grand jury room if they try to bring this case to a D.C. grand jury. It's not going to fly. The U.S. attorney, Nicole, has until July 9th. At 18 days from now, to decide whether and how to charge these cases. The citation on the former Olympians, Mark, has a July 9th court date. So they have until then to figure out how they're going to paper or charge this case, if they charge the case. At the reflecting pool, you have a smell that's emanating now that is reminiscent of a high school locker room. You have a police force and National Guard presence that is profound. It's never bad to have federal law enforcement near a gathering place, and a lot of people are gathering there to rubberneck at the damage. But it's like a jewel heist from the Muppet Caper is going to happen. You have so many police hanging out there, and it seems to be a misappropriation of resources. I'll tell you, Nicole, people in D.C. like the restored fountains that populate the rest of the city. Trump takes credit for that. But I know a week ago tomorrow, D.C. voters unanimously, and I shouldn't say unanimously, overwhelmingly nominated Democrats for office from D.C. who were emphatically opposed to Donald Trump and all his projects.
So you heard the media sneer at citations and security like it's a joke. Now Trump puts it in writing, spelling out the 350-foot damage, and the arrests and the citations tied to it. Posting this to Truth Social, 6 people have been arrested, 7 people cited for the damage they did to our country's now beautiful reflecting pool. The 350-foot gash made by a very sharp knife or razors is actually numerous slashes over a very long 350-foot length. Purposely and criminally done. Somebody had to work very hard, probably in the dark of night, to create such a condition. Likewise, a small area at the bottom of the pool was cut and powerfully lifted off the surface, leaving a very jagged, uneven edges. Large areas of grass are being replaced. In any event, even prior to fixing those areas, the reflecting pool is as beautiful as it can be. We will drain some of the water, either immediately before or after the 4th of July, to do the permanent repair. So the Post makes the White House case plain, deliberate vandalism, not some mystery malfunction. Next, MSNBC gives the mic to one of the men arrested, who says he was cuffed after touching the water.
Just out on about a 50-mile bike ride, and I decided to swing back over by the reflecting pool on my way back as a concerned, curious citizen.
And you checked out the pool. You told the AP that you just put your hand in the water. And then what happened? You had, I've seen like National Guardsmen came up to you and then park police. How did that all go down?
As soon as I left the side of the reflecting pool and went back to my bike that was laid down on its side on the edge of the grass, 3 National Guard troops sort of materialized and started talking to me about, after I greeted them, they were talking to me about the park police wanting to talk to me.
And they arrested you? They put some sort of cuffs or zip ties on you behind your back?
Yeah, I didn't think I'd done anything wrong, so I had no reason to think I was going to be arrested, but I suggested we walk over toward the park police rather than waiting for them to come to us, and went over and furnished my ID, and kind of before I knew it, I was being handcuffed and realized I was being arrested.
Yeah, maybe you should have thought twice. So while one detainee plays the confused bystander, press keeps circling the pool. CNN reports it found more algae and more security equipment on site. They spotted the algae. CNN on the case.
CNN's team spotted more signs of algae at the pool this morning. We also saw at least 6 new trailers in the surrounding area hooked up with security cameras.
Yeah. So CNN can spot algae in trailers just fine. What they can't do is admit the vandalism angle gets stronger. Caroline Levitt about to bring receipts with 17 police reports.
All right, Caroline, any more details on the 5 people that have been arrested regarding vandalism here?
The vandalism is very real, despite what Tim Walz wants to say. It's an imaginary problem. No, it is not. It's a very real problem. In fact, I spoke with the National Park Service just before joining the show. They now have 17 police reports that have been filed in just a matter of a few days. There's actually been 6 arrests at the reflecting pool, where, again, these deranged individuals, many of them longtime donors to the Democrat Party, to Barack Obama, to Act Blue, that have been vandalizing and desecrating our federal monument, one of the most beautiful monuments in the world, the reflecting pool. And that's why President Trump is not going to stop with this effort. We're going to not only hold those people accountable, but we're going to fix the pool, continue to make it beautiful from this despicable vandalism just in time to celebrate our nation's 250th birthday next week.
So she says the damage is real. Suspects are real and Democrats are tied to the chaos. Next, Sean Hannity reminds viewers the media somehow forgot Obama's own costly reflecting pool renovation disaster.
About Barack Obama. Take a look.
But he is claiming that vandals are to blame. He says they illegally placed chemicals in the water and left a 300-foot gash in the pool. Now, 5 people are said to have been arrested. He says a 10-year prison sentence will be strictly enforced. Oh. Well, if he's saying he's going to jail for 10 years, I'm going to let him go. It seems to me that had he not messed with the pool, you know, it would still be a reflecting pool instead of a liquid jungle.
All right, we're getting to the best part. Now, of course, there's been never-ending coverage from the legacy media mob about the state of water in the pool. Camera crews on site from nearly every network. Water samples, expert interviews, in-depth coverage every second of every day. So-called journalists, Democrats have whined in unison about the cost of this project, seemingly forgetting this very one important part We had a president. His name was Barack Hussein Obama. He conducted a renovation of that reflecting pool. He did it in 2012 at roughly double the cost. And the result of Obama's $34 million two-year project, a reflecting pool that continued to leak and a massive algae problem that he had.
So Hannity's point is simple. The same press corps that covered for Obama is now going wall-to-wall against Trump. Next, CBS presses Trump again, and he fires back that he personally saw the cuts.
Who would think that somebody would go into a pool and take a knife and start cutting it?
Do you have proof of that?
Yeah,
they
we have
have
proof.
photos or videos?
Well, let's put it this way. When you have a 350, I think it's 350, not 250, a 350-foot slit from one end to the other, you think that's proof? You think that's proof?
Reporters have been down there today looking for that slit that you mentioned, and there's no evidence of it.
All you'd have to do is see the Parks Department. They'll show it to you.
So Trump says he saw the slashes with his own eyes, points the reporters back to Parks Department. Then CBS's Ed O'Keefe, who you just saw in the Oval, interrogating Trump about it, goes to hunt for that 350-foot gash and claims he still can't find it.
I just did a lap around the pool here. We walked the full length of it. It is mostly algae-free. You can see that American flag blue reflecting up. The ducks are out swimming this morning and look just fine. There are a lot more cops, National Guard, even some U.S. Marshals out here keeping tabs on things. But one thing we still can't find is any evidence of a gash along the floor of the pool. Despite that, the Interior Department is taking steps to drain the pool again and fix it again. As chips of American flag blue lining float amid algae in the reflecting pool, President Trump is blaming vandals, but still not offering evidence, promising a decade in prison for anyone found guilty.
They went in there with a knife.
The president previously claimed the pool was impenetrable with a blade.
If you had a knife, you can't even cut it. So strong, so powerful.
But Monday, he said that's exactly what happened, claiming someone cut a long gash in the pool's lining and pulled at its edges.
Who would think that somebody would go into a pool and take a knife and start cutting it?
But do you have proof of that they used a knife? Do you have photos or video?
Well, let's put it this way. When you have a 350, I think it's 350, not 250, a 350-foot slit from one end to the other, you think that's proof?
But the reporters have been down.
So after all that, CBS still selling doubt instead of answers. Next, Emily Miller reports the original contractor is coming back under warranty with no new taxpayer money as crews deal with the algae coming through the pipes.
President Trump said tonight that they are going to have to redo the surface of the reflecting pool just weeks after they finished it. And I can confirm exclusively that the same contractor, Atlantic Industrial Coatings, is coming back under warranty, no new funds, to redo the surface. They will have to drain the pool. Also tonight, there is some weird influx of algae coming through the pipes. Not seen this before, and it has covered the reflecting pool in green.
And then
Under warranty, they're coming back. So the moral collapse sits right there in Scott McFarlane's own words, not at the pool. In the coverage, he cracked jokes about hearing laughter outside a grand jury room if prosecutors try to treat the threat seriously. That line tells you exactly who the legacy press serves. ABC News, CBS News, CNN did not rush to defend the Lincoln Memorial. They rushed to downgrade the crime, ridicule security, and chip away at a patriotic win before America's 250th birthday. Meanwhile, President Donald J. Trump spelled it out in plain English. 6 arrested, 7 cited, a 350-foot gash, jagged lifted edges, grass destroyed, repairs underway. One side restores beauty, the other sneers at beauty, excuses the wreckers, and calls the cleanup the scandal. So here's the line in the sand. If you still trust ABC, CBS, and CNN after this, then you are choosing propaganda over your own eyes. They heard about 6 arrests, 7 citations, 17 police reports, and physical damage to an American monument, and they still decided that the hero of the story was the guy doing laps around the pool saying he still can't find something. Pathetic. President Trump is doing exactly what a president should do. Protect the monument, repair the damage, track the vandals, and hammer the lying networks that tried to flip the script. And if ABC did push false reporting, then yes, Trump should sue them and route the money to the U.S. Treasury. Let their smear budget fund the country for once. And drop your take in the comments. Should the vandals face the full 10 years that Trump floated? And should the networks pay too? Share this segment with one person still trapped inside the media fog. They need the water cleared. And make sure that you get the notifications that YouTube never sends. Thousands of patriots have already texted the words raw feed to 844-840-4963. They are now on the inside track getting the news that they can make decisions on for their friends and their family. I want you on that list too. And celebrate the wins of America 250. Go to the merch shelf below this video or shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. All right. We will continue to track the lunacy of the reflecting pool drama. But there's other drama we have to get at right now. Ilhan Omar making headlines again. And she is revising her paperwork now, getting confronted on Capitol Hill. And I've got all the details. Rose Lake Capitol pulled in up to $1 million, but Ilhan Omar wants you to believe her husband personally made $200 for the year. $200. Not a typo, not satire. And the bankrupt wine outfit in the middle of this circus carried the name The Devil's Lie, which sounds less like a business and more like a confession. Well, President Trump launches a national war on fraud. One of the left's most protected untouchables just filed a financial story so absurd it insults every taxpayer in this country. Then a reporter pressed Omar and she snapped. Do I look concerned? Well, you should be. You see, this matters because fraud is not a game for cable chatter or Capitol Hill spin doctors. Fraud is your paycheck. Fraud is Medicare money ripped away from seniors. Fraud is Medicaid cash stolen from families who already stretch every dollar. Right now, the Trump administration is finally treating it like the theft that it is. Todd Blanche just announced charges against 455 defendants across 45 states and territories, tied to more than $6.5 billion in false claims. Kash Patel drove the point home. Fraud is no longer being tolerated. President Trump put J.D. Vance in charge of the war on fraud for a reason. He wants the looters cornered. So when Ilhan Omar, a congresswoman from a state hammered by fraud, waves off basic questions and blames an accountant for a money trail that jumped to millions, cratered to zero, now magically lands between $200 and $1,000, she's not just dodging embarrassment. Ilhan Omar is spitting in the face of every American who played by the rules while politically connected Democrats treated disclosure laws like a joke. You see, Rose Lake says up to $1 million in revenue, while Omar's circle pushes a $200 fairy tale. And that's why I pay attention to what actually works. After trying hundreds of supplements, only C60 Evo hit like this. Brain fog gone. Joint pain virtually eliminated. More energy, clearer thinking. My wife's skin looks 10 years younger and my energy feels 20 years younger as well. C60 Evo is a Nobel Prize winning molecule, not just another antioxidant. The Paris study, it showed lab animals live 90% longer, the longest life extension in history, and it works at the cellular level where aging actually happens. It's 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. They've been making this since 1991 in a Houston lab. Get exclusive savings at c60evo.com/NNN. Use code NNN at checkout. Results matter and excuses don't. Feel young again. Now here's a detail that turns this from sleazy to ridiculous. The bankrupt wine company tied to Tim Minette was called The Devil's Lie. You can't invent that. And after scrutiny hit, the story didn't tighten up. It blew apart. Assets once listed as worth up to $30 million got wiped down to zero. Then Omar filed a new disclosure, claiming her husband earned as little as $200 in 2025. I'm going to show you the receipts right here on this screen, because when you see the timeline side by side, the whole scammy pattern hits at once. Omar's new claim that her husband made next to nothing from companies is contradicted by his own accountants. Omar claims her husband made between $200 and $1,000 in all of 2025 in a new filing. So she says her husband made next to nothing. Now Comer steps in and says the story falls apart fast, and he's raising the question of whether this was incompetence or just a straight-up lie. Omar blamed her accountant for a multi-million-dollar reporting error on her financial disclosure. Either her accountant went to the Quality Leering Center or she lied about it.
Well, the walls may be closing in on Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. She faces allegations of steering taxpayer money toward fraudulent schemes in her state. Boy, that state's a mess. Great people, though. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer detailing the next steps of the investigation.
And I do think Ilhan Omar is in a lot of trouble. She's got that big question mark on how her net worth jumped up to, at least $6 million and then went back down to zero over a 1 year period.
So are you saying that Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman from Minnesota, that she was getting federal money and feeding it into these corrupt Somali networks, her cronies?
I think one of the projects she requested proved to be a fraudulent Somali scheme.
Now, we have reached out to Congresswoman Omar's team for comment. We've yet to hear back. We'll let you know if that changes. Meanwhile, a former state employee who was placed on administrative leave is now accusing the Walz administration of ignoring fraud and intimidating whistleblowers. Watch this.
The smear campaign starts where you are told that you are racist, and then your job duties are lessened and lessened until you basically have no job duties. There is just a continuous effort to stifle you, to shut you up. And it is impossible to overcome. So to say that leadership was not aware or the governor was not aware I can tell you that is absolutely false.
So Comer says the numbers don't add up. Walls are closing in. Next, the filings get uglier. Assets once listed as high as $30 million suddenly dropped to zero, while a firm still pulls in up to $1 million. In 2024, Omar's husband, Tim Manette, reported assets worth $30 million from his venture capital firm and wine empire. After a congressional investigation was launched into her finances, she filed an amended disclosure claiming it was all an accounting error and the business were worth zero. Now her 2025 disclosure shows Manette earned as little as $200 for the entire year from a wine company called The Devil's Lie that's since gone bankrupt. His venture capital firm, Rose Lake, still generated $1 million in revenue, but somehow he personally made $200. The woman who built her career screaming about the wealthy hiding their money just filed the most suspicious financial disclosure in congressional history. The devil's lie indeed. So that's the core problem. Big money on paper, almost no personal income claimed, and now even President Trump is weighing in, blasting Omar as Democrats keep treating her like rising star material. Here's President Trump in the Oval Office.
A very smart guy, did a great job. When I look at the Democrats, I call them the Democrats. They're dumb, the Democrats. When I watched that, where one of them thought it was World War XI. She said World War XI. She read World War II. You know about that, right? This is one of their potential leaders, Ilhan Omar, who married her brother to get into the country, by the way, illegally. But when I watch AOC, have no idea on a simple question, what happened when she was over in Switzerland, which she probably never went there before, but she was. And then I watched somebody like JD or Marco. I said, what a difference. What a difference. What a difference a brain makes. Mr. President.
So Trump's point is simple. This is who the left keeps putting out front. And when Omar finally gets pressed on fraud and deportation questions, her answer isn't denial, it's total contempt.
So when Republicans have repeatedly stated that you committed immigration fraud, are you at all worried about a formal investigation that could perhaps lead to your deportation?
Well, you're one of those people.
I don't know what that means, but are you at all concerned?
Do I look concerned?
I guess not. Okay. All right. What about the Minnesota fraud hearing? You didn't show up for that. Do you think you should have?
Why should I have?
Well, it happened in your state. Don't you want to defend your position?
There were people from my state that were there.
Okay, but why not you? I mean, there's allegations that you're complicit in the fraud. Wouldn't you want to show up?
Why would there be an allegation that I'm complicit? How would I be complicit?
Well, what about Tim
Do
Walz?
you just ask stupid questions? Is this your thing?
I'm curious to get your thoughts.
No,
I mean, there's a lot of controversy around the issue. $9 billion in fraud in the state of Minnesota.
$9 billion?
You don't think so?
Really?
Yeah, and counting. Probably more, honestly. You think that's fake news or what?
That is more than half of the resources that are allocated.
Okay.
So you genuinely, your brain has told you that it is possible for half of the resources.
I'm just going off of what
for our public service to half disappear is what you're saying.
Countless Minnesota state representatives, whistleblowers have come
listen
forward.
to yourself, though.
I'm
just
trying.
think about that for a second.
Maybe if you showed up at the hearing, you would
Just-
know that
just think
whistleblowers
about
are
that
being
for a second.
retaliated against for exposing the fraud. Why is that? Why are they being tracked and
just
traced?
Think about what you're asking. Who is tracing whistleblowers?
Minnesota state officials, Tim Walz, anyone who dares to speak out against the government.
Tim Walz is doing something to
Yeah,
whistleblowers?
why is Tim Walz stepping down if he's, innocent? Why isn't he running for re-election?
Because he's had 8 years to serve as our great governor.
He was going to be vice president of the United States if Kamala won.
Yes, and he would have been an excellent vice president.
now he's stepping
much
down.
better than the person we have right now.
And now he's stepping down as governor. Any comment on that? You don't think he's maybe complicit?
He is focusing on trying to make sure our state remains great. All right, have a nice day.
Thank you, you too.
Please read.
Allison Steinberg from Lindell TV for the win there. You just saw Omar melt down when Allison asked direct questions. Next, we shift to another bizarre moment from her orbit, the incident where someone sprayed her at a town hall. The story just seemed to vanish overnight. Whatever happened to the guy that sprayed Ilhan Omar? Curious. The story just faded. It's almost like it was staged. Remember this?
Must resign or face impeachment. I don't know.
Oh my God. Oh my God, he sprayed something on her.
I need a napkin to know nothing.
So the town hall chaos raised plenty of questions that never got answered. Meanwhile, the White House Fraud Task Force is signaling something very different. Now fraudsters are on notice. Good night, fraudsters. Tomorrow's wake-up call, courtesy of the White House Fraud Task Force. From the Mean Post to real action, the crackdown is already hitting. DOJ says 455 defendants across 45 states and territories charged in a massive $6.5 billion healthcare fraud sweep.
We are announcing federal and state charges, all of which were charged or unsealed at some point over the past 2 weeks, the past 14 days. Coordinated nationwide action. Since June 8th, we've charged 455 defendants across 56, like I said a minute ago, U.S. attorneys' offices, and 45 U.S. states and territories. As alleged in the various indictments, these individuals participated in healthcare fraud schemes involving over $6.5 billion in false claims submitted to Medicare, Medicaid, and other healthcare programs. The team around me will get into more specifics, but here are a few points that stand out. In one indictment, we're bringing charges against a corporate executive in Arizona in connection to over a $1 billion fraud involving unnecessary wound grafts. This alleged scheme costs Medicare over $1 million per patient. In total, our indictment charges 11 defendants for over $2 billion in fraudulent claims in connection to alleged wound care schemes. The indictment also alleges that these individuals then used the taxpayer money to bankroll multi-million-dollar homes, luxury vehicles like a $135,000 Maserati, jewelry like an $865,000 Bulgari necklace, and to top it all off, to fund the construction of a $4.6 million hotel at a beach resort in the Philippines. We're taking back the money, the luxury cars, the jewelry, and these alleged fraudsters will face justice. The coordinated actions of the past 2 weeks have resulted in over $182 million in cash and other assets seized, making clear our healthcare fraud enforcement efforts generate a significant return on investment for our taxpayers.
So those are real numbers and real arrests, not the usual swamp press release. Leader, next FBI Director Kash Patel spells out what Trump-era leadership on the fraud actually looks like.
America, you should take a look. You should take a look at what leadership from the White House and the President Trump's prioritization to go after and combat fraud looks like. America should take a look at the Vice President's task force and the initiative by the Justice Department here under AG Todd Blanche and AAG Colin McDonald. Fraud is no longer being tolerated, it is not being put up with, and you've seen the staggering numbers that in just the last 2 weeks, that's all we're here to talk about today, is just the last 2 weeks of fraud, of perpetrators and criminals who have been arrested and apprehended from around the world, totaling over $6 and $7 billion in fraud, in money stolen from the American people, our precious taxpayer dollars that are supposed to service our seniors and our kids were being stolen outright by individuals who thought they could get away with it. But thanks to the Trump administration and the Vice President's task force and the White House task force and the Department of Justice's courageous prosecutors, we have now been able to charge a record number of individuals.
So Kash Patel says the message is clear. Fraud is no longer being tolerated. President Trump taking it a step further, naming the man leading the war on fraud, Vice President J.D. Vance.
To stop the massive theft of taxpayer dollars, including millions of illegals, we've launched the war on fraud led by our great Vice President J.D. Vance. He's doing a great job. Doing a great job. Smart guy.
Doing a great job. So the peak of the story is not Ilhan Omar's attitude, it's the number. Up to 30 million and then zero. Then $200 to $1,000. And in the middle of that mess sits Rose Lake Capital, still generating up to $1 million in revenue, while Tim Minette supposedly scraped together lunch money. Ilhan Omar did not get cornered by a trick question. Ilhan Omar got cornered by arithmetic. Then she barked at a reporter, "Did you just ask a stupid question?" No, Congresswoman. Americans ask the questions you and your protectors in the press spent years trying to smother. And James Comer has it exactly right. Either the accountant learned the math at the Quality Leering Center, or Ilhan Omar lied. Pick one. And then subpoena the records. See, President Trump put grown-ups back in charge. And this is exactly what that looks like when the cameras are rolling and the protected class starts sweating. J.D. Vance leads a real war on fraud. Kash Patel backs it with muscle. Todd Blanche backs it with indictments. Good. Keep going. If the Trump administration can hammer 455 defendants across 45 states and territories, over $6.5 billion in false claims, then Washington can stop treating Ilhan Omar like left-wing royalty and start treating her like every other person who files numbers with the federal government. No immunity, no magic accountant, no escape hatch labeled amended disclosure. And if legacy media wants to keep babysitting Omar while she snarls at voters and stonewalls questions, let them expose themselves too. And drop your take below after you watch that meltdown again. And share this with somebody who still thinks the ruling class plays by the rules. And keep your eyes on Minnesota. The cleanup started. Now it's time to finish it. And I want to make sure you get the news that you depend on. I've seen your comments. I've seen you guys say, hey, I don't get notifications anymore. And that's why I set up this special number just for you. Thousands of patriots have already texted the words raw feed to 844-840-4963. I do not want you to be left out. I want to make sure you are on the inside track with Next News. And you get the notifications direct from me to your phone once a night. And make sure you're celebrating all the wins with us here at Next News. America 250 is here. Go to the merch shelf below this video or go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. Let's go, Gary. Copo 801. What's up? Thank you for that 20 over there on Rumble. And Dave the Patriot and Salty Nationalist, Donald Strickland, Ruby Hoove, and Clifford Johnson. All you guys chipping in tonight. Much appreciated. We're going to move along now. We got to talk about what's going on in Cuba. As I've stated, I've just felt it in my gut after taking the temperature. I can see it. Cuba's next, and they are now just setting up the dominoes. President Trump just said the words Havana feared most. Cuba has collapsed. Then he twisted the knife. We'll make a little brief stop, not someday, not after another decade of State Department chatter, a brief stop. That line hit because the communist racket in Cuba already started running for cover. Reuters just admitted Cuban lawmakers rammed through more than 175 privatization measures to survive U.S. sanctions. Survive. That's panic language. Trump crushed the old foreign policy scam in Iran, reopened American leverage, and now the Havana dictatorship knows the clock is ticking. And wait to hear what Marco Rubio and the Supreme Court just dropped on the regime from two different directions. See, this matters because Cuba sits 90 miles from Florida. For decades, the Havana dictatorship looted an island, starved families, jailed dissidents, and mocked exiles while weak men in Washington played footsie with tyrants. President Trump ended that nonsense. He said Cuban Americans will go back to their land and invest in Cuba. And that cuts straight to the core of the crime. Fidel Castro, Raul Castro, and the cartel that still feeds off that machine did not just steal wages. They stole homes, farms, businesses, coastlines, family futures, entire bloodlines of opportunity. Now Marco Rubio is choking the cash arteries that kept the mob alive. He blasted Gaisa, the military conglomerate that diverted resources into repression and anti-American subversion, and he sanctioned Cupet after charging that regime. Elites burned fuel on Castro's private jet, security forces, empty tourist hotels, and fake protests, while ordinary Cubans sat through blackouts and waited weeks for gas. That's not governance. That is organized theft with a flag. See, Marco Rubio is choking communist cash pipelines in Cuba. And that should remind every American how fast strategic resources turn into leverage. And that's why I want you looking at Noble Gold Investments and silver as the next oil. Before the world depended on oil, it was cheap. Silver sits in that same zone now, a critical resource in solar panels, electric vehicles, but also defense systems, AI infrastructure, and massive data centers. Growing demand keeps building. And it's still affordable enough that the average American can start accumulating physical silver to protect against inflation. Go to nextnewsgold.com and see how Noble Gold frames the metal that the future depends on. Mention my name, and with a new qualified account, you can receive a 1/10 ounce gold coin. Don't let communist thieves corner tomorrow's strategic resources. Now, here's the part Havana can't spin away. Reuters didn't say the regime embraced freedom because it found religion. Reuters said those 175 measures passed in a bid to survive punishing U.S. sanctions. Survive. That one word blows up the whole fake reform show. And while the communist machine scrambles to privatize pieces of the wreckage it stole, the Supreme Court just opened the door for ExxonMobil to sue over confiscated assets. So I'm going to pull up the receipts. And while I do, keep one question in your head. Who exactly does Havana think gets to keep the loot? President Trump dropping a bombshell on Cuba from the Oval Office. Next stop, Cuba.
Of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And as soon as that's done on our way back, we'll just make a little brief stop.
Mr. President.
We'll take care of it. We want to help them out. Look, we have a lot of people that voted for Trump. Whether they did or not, it didn't matter. But I had 95% of the Cubans voted for me. They're unbelievable people. They're energetic. They're entrepreneurial. You know, some of the richest people in Miami are Cuban. They're unbelievable. And I'm going to take good care of them. I'm going to let them go back to their land. They want to be back with family. You know, they have a lot of family over there. They've been treated very badly by Cuba. But we're going to treat Cuba well, and we're going to let our people go back and let them invest in Cuba if they'd like. So we have some very good plans for Cuba. I think, you know, we have to get rid of the regime was very tough, very nasty. The difference is now they don't have money coming in. They had a lot of money coming in from Venezuela. They don't have any money coming. They had oil coming in. They had money coming in. But we're going to take care of Cuba.
Mr. President, sir.
And they, you know what? They want us to. The people want us there so badly.
So Trump didn't just say Cuba's collapsing. He said his team already has plans. Next, he gets pressed on timing and reveals Marco Rubio is deeply involved. Trump said that it is Cuba's turn and revealed that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is deeply involved and Cuba desperately wants to talk.
I did want to talk about Cuba and AI.
We'll do it, and we have to do it fast because they're waiting for me at a very important minute.
So you had said if Cuba is, or better said, if Iran is finished, then it's time for Cuba.
Right.
Is there a clock, a countdown clock on Cuba?
It's a flexible line, but Marco is involved very much. Marco's doing a great job, by the way. All my people are doing a very good job. But Marco's parents, it's such a great story. His parents were from Cuba. So you do agree I defeated Venezuela? Incredible.
100%.
How do you
make the operation in Cuba look more like the Venezuela operation?
Well, the difference is Venezuela has oil, Cuba doesn't. Cuba has nice property and they have a nice shoreline.
Right. How do you make it look more like the Venezuela operation than the Iran operation? Iran operation took longer. Venezuela.
No, I think the Iran operation, in a certain way, it's much bigger, much more powerful from the standpoint of weaponry than Venezuela. But Venezuela is a very military state. They have a lot of soldiers. We went into that fort and they had thousands of soldiers in, and we went in with 201 people. And that was the pilot was very brave. He had his leg shot from underneath with the machine gunner who got who escaped a bad.
So now you got Trump tying Rubio directly to the Cuba playbook. Next, watch the old Rubio warning that the world is changing fast and suddenly looks a lot less theoretical. That Marco Rubio clip is hitting different now. He said the world's changing fast. The old world is gone, and people laughed.
The world is changing very fast right in front of us. No. The old world is gone, frankly, the world I grew up in, and we live in a new era in geopolitics, and it's going to require all of us to sort of re-examine what that looks like and what our role is going to be. And we've had many of these conversations in private with many of our allies. We are our allies, and we need to continue to have those conversations. And I think Saturday, hopefully, and the meetings we'll have there when Lucas and then.
So Rubio said the old world was gone. And now that message is getting a second look. Over on Fox, Jesse Waters takes the same theme and argues Trump is moving from Iran straight to Cuba. That's what I've been saying for weeks.
How was the Strait of Hormuz over the weekend? Iran lost the war. They surrendered, and now they're letting the United States and the UN in to look at their sites and their uranium, and then they're going to destroy it. Do I need to keep talking? I mean, that sounds pretty good. Very funny. But Dana's right. If they do say at the end of 60 days, go F yourself, all the uranium's buried. They can't touch it. So does it even really matter? And so now you have people coming out like what? Booker and Rice. We don't take them seriously. They're buffoons. We only put their sound bites in the segment for friction. The nuke program is destroyed. The military, 85% destroyed, and the Strait's open. Greg's gone out there peacefully.
Yes.
He hasn't been attacked. Iran's bluffed their way the last 10 days. There's been no tankers that have been attacked. We're actually going to wrap this up hopefully pretty soon, and we can move on to Cuba. My banking buddy told me that after we topple Castro, we're going to be able to buy 100 acres of pristine Cuban coastline for like 50 G's.
Is that insider trading or
not insider trading? That's just word on the street.
How does this contribute to this segment?
What I'm saying is Donald Trump is crushing it on the world stage. We now have Latin America and the Middle East under our thumb. We are now OPEC. And the Chinese economy is struggling, and Putin's losing this war in Ukraine. J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio are looking really good. Trump's delegated beautifully. They've gotten experience, respect, stature. Meanwhile, Harris and Newsom, what are they, cackling and selling knee pads? Forget about that. But Dana is right.
So Waters is calling it strength on the world stage, but behind the TV talk, there's tougher questions. What is Washington doing quietly? Next, a former Intel hand lays out why CIA Director Ratcliffe's Cuba trip matters. He says there's only one reason to make that trip. The pitch straightforward: cooperate and you get American legal protection. Refuse and we sanction you, your wife, your children, and your extended family. Anywhere on earth, we freeze every asset you have.
think John Ratcliffe was doing that? Do you think he was bidding for the Cuban intelligence archives? Here's a preliminary. Here's an offer, initial offer. I want you guys to think about it, and think about it. What good it would be, how it would help you out of some jams that you're clearly in, and how it's good for your much more powerful neighbor to the north.
Yeah, I would like to think it. I just don't know. It could be. I mean, Biden's CIA director also went to on these types of trips, so I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in this. But really, why else would CIA Director Ratcliffe go there except to take over this intelligence service? He really has no other reason to go down to a country like Cuba except for that purpose. And there are deals you can cut. You know, we can, if you become our intelligence asset, you are under certain American legal protections. You can say the chief of the Cuban intelligence service. We can either sanction you and haul you off to jail in the United States.
Guantanamo. Yeah, well,
we can sanction your wife and your children and your nieces and nephews and your mother and everybody else and seize your property and freeze it anywhere on earth and dog you and your family to every ends of the earth, or you can help us out.
Yeah. And we'll get your daughter into the University of Miami. She can be on the cheerleading squad.
Yeah.
So that clip lays out the hardball version. Cooperate, get crushed by sanctions. Next, Rubio makes it official, targeting the military money machine that props up the regime. Rubio posting this: the situation in Cuba is devolving as the island's corrupt, brutal, and anti-American communist regime continues to prioritize its own total control over the freedom, opportunity, and basic well-being of the Cuban people. The Cuban military-controlled conglomerate Gaesa has persistently served as the main vector for regime elites to steal the island's few resources, diverting them for repression, anti-American subversion, and spying instead of schools, power plants, and basic necessities for the Cuban people. Today, I designated additional Gaesa network entities associated with moving both its money and physical assets, as well as entities responsible for exploiting Cuba's mineral and metal reserves for ill-gotten profit. Anyone providing services to these sanctioned actors is at risk of being sanctioned themselves. Foreign banks and other companies that provide services to these entities should freeze those activities immediately. So Rubio's pressure campaign is aimed right at the regime cash pipeline. Now comes the reaction. Cuba's Communist Party suddenly approves free market reforms. Cuba's Communist Party approves sweeping free market reforms in an unprecedented move to open the economy. Polymarket posting that. So after years of control, Havana now pretending it discovered markets overnight. Reuters breaks down just how sweeping the reforms are and why the regime says it has to move now. They report Cuban lawmakers unanimously approved sweeping reforms backed by the Communist Party and former leader Raul Castro that would privatize a vast swath of the country's socialist economy in a bid to survive punishing U.S. sanctions.
Cuban lawmakers on Thursday unanimously approved sweeping reforms that would privatize a vast swath of the country's socialist economy. The list of more than 175 measures includes opening the door to private real estate development and proposals to transform state-owned businesses into private commercial ventures. It would also allow private banks to enter Cuba, as well as the sale of state-owned properties to national and foreign entities, including Cubans residing abroad. Here's Cuban Prime Minister Manuel Marrero.
These are proposals to confront the crisis, opening a transformative window that, if not implemented now, could bring irreversible political and social consequences. But I want to reiterate that these transformations do not represent a departure from the socialist project. On the contrary, they follow the logic of its own development.
If implemented, the measures would represent the single largest change to the Caribbean island's socialist model since former leader Fidel Castro's 1959 revolution. They are backed by the Communist Party and his brother, former leader Raul Castro. In a written letter to lawmakers, he called them, quote, beneficial and urged their speedy implementation. The move comes amid punishing U.S. sanctions, including a months-long oil blockade. But Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel told lawmakers it was not related to negotiations between the two countries. He also urged them to keep faith in the country's socialist past.
What we are defending here, above all, is the question of how to continue the process of building socialism. How to build socialism in a country which has suffered the longest, most criminal blockade in history by the most powerful country in the world.
So they can call socialism all they want, but when communists start privatizing, they're cornered. Next, Fox has the latest on fresh U.S. sanctions hitting Cuban entities and Castro, a family member. U.S. sanctions 5 Cuban entities, Castro, family member, in latest pressure campaign, Rubio says. Squeeze is tightening, more sanctions, more names, more pressure. Now Rubio zeroes in on energy, accusing Cuba's elite of hoarding fuel while ordinary people sit in the dark. Today, I'm sanctioning Cuba's state-owned energy company, Union Cuba Petroleo, CUPET, under President Trump's EO 14404. Cuba's communist elites have weaponized energy as a tool of social control and kleptocratic profit. For decades, the regime has stolen and hoarded available fuel, using it for Castro's private jet, the security services forces used to repress the Cuban people, to keep empty tourist hotels lit up, and to bus people in for fake protests and political stunts, all while the Cuban people have suffered blackouts and waited weeks to fill their cars. President Trump wants a new future for the Cuban people with greater economic and political freedom and opportunity. Until then, we will continue to target the communist regime's ability to leverage its energy trade to further its corrupt agenda and violently repress the Cuban people. So Rubio says the regime turned fuel into a weapon against its own people. Next, the Supreme Court opens another front, letting ExxonMobil sue communist Cuba over seized assets. Daily Signal reports the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that oil giant ExxonMobil was able to sue communist Cuba over seized oil and gas assets, overriding sovereign immunity. So the moral verdict here, it lands. Miguel Diaz-Canel, Raul Castro holdovers, and Gaisa Cupet kleptocrats are not reformers, they are cornered thieves. Trump said Cuba has collapsed. Rubio hammered the regime for using fuel on the Castro's private jet in fake protests while Cuban families sweated through blackouts. Then Reuters dropped the confession. More than 175 privatization measures passed to survive U.S. sanctions. Not to free the people, to save the racket. And on the same board, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that ExxonMobil can sue communist Cuba over confiscated property. Financial pressure, legal pressure, intelligence pressure. Trump's brief stop line was not a joke. It was a warning shot, and Havana heard every single word of it. So here's where this goes next. President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have the communist regime on defense. And patriots should demand they keep the pressure on until the criminals lose control of the stolen machinery they hid behind for generations. No soft landing for Gaisa. No face-saving fake reform package for Cupet. No diplomatic fairy tale that lets the same Castro-era parasites shuffle assets into new shells and call it freedom. Trump already laid down the promise that matters most. Cuban exiles should be able to go back to their land, reunite with their family, and invest in a country that dictatorship gutted. That is justice. It's not charity. If you agree that Havana's rulers deserve accountability instead of oxygen, put it in the comments and share this broadcast, because the propaganda press will bury the story if we let them. Trump closed in on Iran. Now Cuba heard the engine overhead. Now I want to make sure you get the news you depend on. I've seen your comments, I've heard your cries, and that's why I set up this number just for you, 844-840-4963. Thousands and thousands of patriots are already getting the inside track direct from me when the YouTube notifications never arrive. All they got to do, and all you have to do, and should do, is text those words raw feed to that number on the screen. Stay on the inside track from me direct to your phone. And make sure you celebrate the wins of America 250 by going to the merch shelf below this video or going to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. Cuba is next. Mark my words. Okay. Speaking of bold moves, we went from Omar to Cuba. Now we are going in head-on into the deep state. In this next story, I think you're going to like. President Trump talks about draining the swamp, and the swamp is panicking right now. They're terrified because of what comes next after Tulsi Gabbard. The deep state firings have already begun. Yeah, I did see it, yes. CNN said the quiet part out loud. Not us. CNN. A source inside the intelligence apparatus told them, quote, "The deep state firings have begun." There it is. The confession, the panic, the whole protected racket caught in one line. And why are ABC, CNN, Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, and even Tom Tillis melting down? Because President Trump just dropped Bill Pulte into ODNI as acting chief. And Trump built the move for speed. Trump said that Pulte is less shackled in the acting role. Less shackled means fewer excuses, fewer Senate games, fewer bureaucrats hiding behind badges and acronyms, and now the fortress is taking hits. See, this matters because ODNI does not sit off to the side handing out paper clips. That office oversees the intelligence machinery that career operatives use for years to leak, stall, manipulate, and smother elected leadership. The fight here is not over office seating charts. The fight is over who commands the apparatus. President Donald Trump, chosen by voters, or the cartel in Washington that turned national security into a protected jobs program for regime loyalists. CNN handed us the proof with that line, "The deep state firings have begun," and then pretended the tragedy was the firings, not the deep state. ABC pushed the same panic and even broadcast Trump's point that Pulte can move because he's temporary, because he's less shackled. Exactly, that is the win. And Tom Tillis exposed himself even further, screaming that Pulte is an incompetent sycophant. No, Senator, he's the wrecking ball. You are defending the building. And the people inside that building know their taxpayer-funded fortress just stopped being permanent. You see, CNN blurting out that deep state firings have begun reminded me how often the regime sneers at anything that actually helps people. Then I saw Joe Rogan and Mel Gibson talking serious health struggles, light-based therapies, and Gibson says the stuff works. And that hit home after Jonathan Otto introduced our family to red light therapy. My wife went from constant discomfort and anxiety to real restful sleep, improved recovery, and better energy. We saw support for recovery and sleep without chasing expensive outside appointments. There's NASA-backed research behind the cellular-level impact and FDA-cleared devices that support circulation and reduce inflammation at myredlight.com. You get red and near-infrared wavelengths, deeper penetration, PEMF mats, full-body coverage, infrared heat, and at-home use instead of paid sessions. Go to myredlight.com, use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. You can break the cartel everywhere. See, one detail makes this even sweeter. Tom Tillis did not just gripe. He detonated on camera and called Bill Pulte an incompetent sycophant while warning the cuts would be a hot, steamy pile of Doge shit. That's what he said. That kind of language from a Republican senator tells you the knives are already out inside Washington. Good. Because when Senate meddlers start sounding more hysterical than CNN, you know Trump found the nerve. Now I'm going to show you the receipts, and I want to get to the part that should terrify every protected leaker in that building. This is not just about firings. It's about the files. Good Morning America. They even did a story on this. They said he has begun the firings at the agency.
The acting director of national intelligence had promised to make hundreds of cuts, and this morning sources tell us those firings are now underway. Now, it is not clear how many jobs are going to be affected, but sources say the National Counterterrorism Center is likely to be hit hard. Pulte, who just took over the role last week, today's actually his second full day on the job, is a Trump loyalist with zero intelligence experience. But the president has made clear he wants him to slash jobs at the agency, and Trump says he thinks Pulte is actually better able to make these cuts because he's in the role temporarily. Trump saying he's less shackled to do this. Now, Democrats and many Republicans have strongly opposed Pulte being in this role, even for the short term, and they've tried to prevent this. All of this and these cuts are sure to be a topic of conversation when the president meets tomorrow with Senate Republicans, Michael.
Yeah, the whole thing makes you shake your head, Mary. And we're also learning the Pentagon, they're asking for nearly $80 billion for the Iran war.
Yeah, Michael, the Pentagon is at.
So we're now learning from CBS News just over 50 people have lost their job at ODNI since Pulte became acting director of national intelligence. ODNI terminated 6 career and political intelligence officials. 45 have been sent back to their home agencies. Pulte had been asking deputies and other directors for suggestions. One source said the cuts had been pretty thoughtful and methodical. They didn't move out anyone from the counterintelligence group, as you just heard from Good Morning America. No further firings are planned for now. But ABC is confirming the cuts are underway. The usual D.C. crowd is panicking. Now here's Bannon with the blunt test. If Schumer, Warner, and Lindsey all hate Bill Pulte, there's a pretty good sign he's hitting the right targets.
Why Bill Pulte's so important. The reason he's so important is the meltdown by the system. If Mark Warner and Tom Cotton and Lady Lindsey and this entire crowd, Schumer, Pocahontas, all of them, if they all hate Pulte, we love him. If they all hate Pulte, we love him, just by definition.
So he says the system's meltdown tells you everything. Now, one Republican Senator, Tom Tillis, goes completely unglued, calling Pulte an incompetent sycophant over the firings. Check this out.
If Pulte does a reduction in force the way that I've been engaged to do it before, where you do the analysis, you make sure you retain the most capable people, and you only eliminate the people whose jobs can be either automated or never should have been there, good. My guess is, based on his past experience, it's just going to be another hot, steamy pile of Doge shit. I think he's an incompetent sycophant and not the right person to lead DNI.
Tom Tillis unleashed. He is warning that the acting director of national intelligence, Bill Pulte, is undermining the agency by firing staff en masse. The large-scale cuts are underway right now after Pulte showed up a day early to the job last week and demanded a list of every employee in the office.
So Tillis gave the game away with that tantrum. Next, CNN itself confirms what Trump allies have been saying out loud. The deep state firings have begun. Kristen Holmes says, firings at the office of DNI started today. The deep state firings have begun, the source said, declining to give details on how many jobs have been cut. So CNN using the phrase everyone in Washington hates to hear, deep state firings. Next round coverage shows just how rattled they are by Pulte moving fast and Democrats crying about who's getting cut.
Trump's controversial pick as acting director of national intelligence, Bill Pulte, has been slashing jobs. One source tells CNN, quote, the deep state firings have begun, end quote. That source did not elaborate on what exactly they mean by deep state. Pulte has no known background in intelligence or national security, but he is temporarily leading the office of the DNI, which oversees 18 intelligence agencies. Democrats are voicing alarm over his large-scale cuts in the intelligence community.
Bill Pulte is somebody who has zero experience when it comes to national security and intelligence matters. His sort of defining mission in the Trump administration has been as a political hitman for Donald Trump to go after his political adversaries. And now this is the guy who's going to be firing people with experience and expertise when it comes to our national security intelligence matters. So what could go wrong?
CNN's Kevin Liptak joins us now live from the...
So CNN trying to sell panic over the cleaning house, but Trump has a different view. Here explains why he picked Pulte for the acting role, and being temporary makes him harder for the Senate swamp to stop.
Pulte is the acting director of national intelligence. There's been a little bit of a pushback from some Senate Republicans. Why do you think, Mr. President, he's the best person for the job?
Well, he's very smart. He's a person who's got high integrity. He's done a phenomenal job at Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. You probably have $1 trillion in value there. When he took over, it was much less. And I guess I'm responsible for that too, because everybody wanted me to sell it in my first term for 10% of what it's worth right now. If I would have sold it, we would have lost $900 billion. We would have lost, think of it, it's probably worth $1 trillion. And I was offered, people want me to sell it at $100 billion, a very small percentage of what it's worth now. So, and he built it up a lot, did a great job. And it's an acting position. It's not a permanent. He's not going to be permanent because, I don't think he'd want to be permanent. But he's a very smart guy, and he may find out some things about the rigged elections, et cetera, et cetera. I think he'd like to do it. I think he wants to do it very much. Got a lot of energy. But he'll be very good. Again, it's not a permanent position. We're interviewing people right now, but it's somebody just to take it over for a little while.
Does he have the necessary, in your view, Mr. President, the necessary national security experience to take on that position?
Well, I do, and I think he does, actually, because he's smart. Because a lot of national security, I wasn't greatly experienced in national security, and I think I've done a really great job with it. A lot of people would say that I've ended 8 wars, and soon to be a 9th. I hope that works out too. Frankly, but.
So Trump makes the case that he's there to do a job, not win over Capitol Hill. Next to see why MAGA is lining up behind him. While Letitia James and the establishment crowd would clearly rather have anyone else in the seat. My White House correspondent colleague, Kara Castronova at Lindell TV, had this report to file today.
New York Attorney General Letitia James is in self-preservation mode. One of President Trump's fiercest enemies, a confused James, went on MS Now and praised what appeared to be Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence, Jay Clayton, saying she hopes that the Senate confirms him.
Though he doesn't have all of the credentials, he is someone who has been professional and someone who knows the law.
Letitia James' praise for President Trump's pick has many in MAGA concerned, and it's obvious James wants anyone but Bill Pulte in the job, to the point where she couldn't even get basic facts straight. She referred to Clayton as the, quote, Attorney General of the Eastern District of New York.
The candidate who was once the Attorney General for the Eastern District here in the state of New York.
A position that doesn't even exist. And Bill Pulte, the acting head of DNI until Clayton is confirmed, is the man who has hit James with criminal referrals over alleged mortgage and insurance fraud. No wonder she's desperate. While Democrats like Letitia James appear comfortable with Clayton, populist MAGA world is showing something rare in the past year. Broad unity. After close to a year of MAGA infighting over Middle East foreign policy, the coalition is unified in wanting Bill Pulte to stay at DNI. Steve Bannon and Roger Stone have publicly feuded for years. Laura Loomer and Marjorie Taylor Greene have traded plenty of public barbs. Alex Jones generally has his own unique theories. Yet right now, they're all in uniform agreement. Keep Bill Pulte as the acting director of national intelligence. Roger Stone said, quote, Bill Pulte will be a great director of national intelligence. Smart, tough, and deeply loyal to President Donald J. Trump. Bannon called the Pulte move a middle finger to the Senate, an FU to the deep state. He suggested giving Pulte time, saying, give Pulte a couple of weeks. Let him just rummage around and see what's going on. Marjorie Taylor Greene has called Pulte a fighter. Anna Paulina Luna posted, Bill Pulte will be a great ODNI. Go, Bill, go. Laura Loomer has labeled Clayton as a deep state plant, and Alex Jones has called Clayton part of a, quote, Epstein file cover-up. Loomer is one of Pulte's strongest supporters, rooting for him to carry out mass firings of entrenched officials and calling his aggressive, drain the swamp approach exactly what the MAGA base wants. Since taking office on June 19th, Pulte has wasted zero time. He showed up a day early, demanded a full list of ODNI employees, and declared he's there to drain the swamp, openly planning major firings and pushing declassifications. Many in MAGA hope he'll follow in the footsteps of former DNI Director Tulsi Gabbard in releasing information on the 2020 election, COVID crimes, and more. Many speculate that's why rhinos and Democrats want Pulte out, and why the intelligence community and the establishment Republicans are so eager to rush Jay Clayton through. Senators like Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, Tom Cotton, John Thune, and others have been pushing hard for quick confirmation, viewing Clayton as a safe, experienced choice with Democrat support. Clayton, a former Sullivan and Cromwell partner and current U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, is Trump's official nominee. But President Trump is strategically holding the confirmation hostage. He is demanding that the Senate first confirm his pick for Southern District U.S. Attorney James McDonald, along with movement on the Save America Act. FISA Section 702 reauthorization is also stuck in the leverage play. For now, Bill Pulte remains acting DNI, and for MAGA, he has become a powerful unifier. If he does what he says and fires entrenched officials and releases long-hidden documents, the stronger that unity grows, which is exactly what Trump's base wants and needs heading into the crucial 2026 midterms. Reporting for Lindell TV at the White House, I'm Kara Castronova.
What an amazing report, Kara. At the White House, so MAGA is uniting around Pulte because they see a fighter taking a wrecking ball to the intel bureaucracy. Mike Davis takes it a step further, saying Trump should give Pulte time to rip that place apart before handing the job to anyone else.
I love that President Trump put Bill Pulte in charge of the DNI, Director of National Intelligence. Bill Pulte is, as I always say, a bold and fearless warrior for the Constitution. He's a businessman. He's not a politician. He's not a creature of Washington, not a creature of the swamp. And he'll go in there and he'll rip apart that place. For as long as President Trump needs Bill Pulte to rip apart that place. I would just say this as someone who used to confirm judges and Justice Department officials and others when I worked in the Senate. Even if the Senate confirms Jay Clayton as the next DNI, President Trump does not have to sign his commission and swear him in until President Trump is ready. So they should feel. I don't think President Trump should wait to have Jay Clayton confirmed. Have him confirmed, and then he can just hang out until Bill Pulte has gone through and broken every piece of China in DNI. And then when Bill Pulte's done breaking China, then Jay Clayton can get his commission handed to him, delivered, and then sworn in, and then he can start.
Genius. Absolutely genius. So the moral verdict lands right on that CNN sentence. The deep state firings have begun. A source inside ODNI used the phrase deep state because even the insiders know what that building became. Then Tom Tillis ripped off the mask and called Bill Pulte an incompetent sycophant. For who? For Donald Trump, the elected president? Tillis did not defend voters, he defended process, bureaucracy, and the same insulated class that sabotaged the America First movement for years. Steve Bannon framed it perfectly. If Mark Warner, Tom Cotton, Lady Lindsay, Chuck Schumer, and Pocahontas all hate Bill Pulte, we love him. See, that's not tribalism. That is target confirmation. Pulte is hitting the cartel where it lives. Payroll, access, and protection. You see, President Trump just outmaneuvered the Senate crowd with one clean move. He put Bill Pulte in as acting chief, gave him room to move fast, and told the country exactly why. Because he's smart, he has integrity, and is acting as in an acting role, he's less shackled. See, that wasn't a throwaway line. That was the whole strategy. Less shackled means fewer choke points for Mark Warner, Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, Tom Tillis, and every media clerk at ABC and CNN who wants the intelligence bureaucracy to stay untouchable. The backlash will get uglier from here because the swamp protects itself. Expect more leaks, expect more smears, expect more Republican cowardice dressed up as prudence. But do not miss the score. Tulsi Gabbard opened the files. Bill Pulte is cleaning out the building. If you want that to continue, send this segment to one person still pretending the deep state's a myth and tell them to read CNN's own words out loud. I want to make sure you get the news you depend on. I put this number on the screen at the end of every segment because it's important. Our news is important. You're important, and I want you to be informed, and I want you on the inside track like thousands and thousands of patriots already are. Just text the words raw feed to 844-840-4963 and get notifications, the ones that YouTube never sends, get them direct from me to your phone. That's my promise to you. And celebrate the wins with the Next News Network by going to the merch shelf below this video. Celebrate America 250 with us, or just go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. The deep state firings have begun. CNN reporting. I love it. That's the show tonight, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for trusting me and inviting me into your home, inviting me onto your mobile device, on your computer, into your X feed, into your YouTube feed, your Rumble feed, wherever you're watching. I really appreciate the trust you put in Next News and my team here to bring you the news every single day. And we couldn't do it without you guys. So make sure you keep your eyes open for when these segments drop on X and share them out with your friends. Make sure you see the YouTube links when they're published. Text them to a friend, to a loved one. Introduce them to the Next News Network. You guys are the secret weapon in this war for truth in our great republic. And we couldn't do it without you. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful and blessed evening.